Tim Duncan and Jason Kidd. Back in 2003, Jason Kidd was one of the most impactful players in the league. He was the best point guard in the league, and he recently led the Nets to back-to-back NBA Finals but lost both times. In 2003, the Spurs would defeat them, and over the summer, Kidd would be a free agent. He actually considered signing with the Spurs as Greg Popovich loved him. Kidd would be a perfect fit on the Spurs. You add on Manu Ginobili as well, and it would have been a legit super team. At that time, Tony Parker was just 21 years old and had a disappointing finals performance. Coach Pop was kinda getting impatient of Tony and didn't think he was a true point guard. So he felt like if they got Kidd, it would solidify the Spurs as contenders for a long time. Kidd said that not signing with the Spurs was the biggest disappointment of his life. "I thought I was going to be a Spur. I committed when I was down there on my visit to San Antonio. On my flight home, I think I got cold feet, and sometimes I have nightmares about that. Maybe I could have won a championship or two there, but I got really lucky with Dallas and won a championship." At the end of the day, even though this super team didn't happen, it still worked out very well for both sides. Parker developed into a star and helped the team win 3 more championships after 2003. And Kidd, of course, won a title with Dallas in 2011. Number 6, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, and Pau Gasol. In the 2007 offseason, it was recognized as one of the most influential ones of all time. We saw Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen join Paul Pierce in Boston. However, before that, Garnett was actually considering joining Kobe and the Lakers. The Lakers obviously were interested in Garnett, just like every other team in the league. So in the same summer, the Lakers offered Minnesota a package surrounding Lamar Odom and a 19-year-old Andrew Bynum. At that time, the owner, Jerry Buss, stated, "I have a handshake agreement with Wolves owner Glenn Taylor that Garnett's coming to Los Angeles." However, the Wolves GM, Kevin McHale, was still unsure between sending Garnett to LA or Boston. It was only between those two teams, but he ultimately decided to accept the Boston deal. It would have been cool to see a lineup of Kobe, Garnett, and Pau. The Lakers still managed to win 2 more championships without Garnett, but if they had him, the entire history would be different. The Celtics would probably not be champions, and the Lakers would probably dominate for longer, and might have won an extra 1 or 2 more championships on top of that. Plus, we get to see Kobe and KG, 2 of the most intense players in the league, play together on the same team. That would have been so fun to watch. Number 5, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Derrick Rose. Before LeBron decided to take his talents to South Beach, there was a brief moment where him and Dwayne Wade considering signing with Chicago, teaming up with Derrick Rose, their young star. That team also had Luol Deng and Joakim Noah back when he was actually good. A few years later, Wade would talk about this situation and what really happened. He said, "It was us trying to put together our dream team in a sense. Chicago was very tempting from a standpoint of what they had on the roster when it came to the young talent. But when it came to the point Miami was able to get 3 players, that changed the whole dynamic of the summer. We thought about it, that didn't happen. I mean, this was a place I wanted to play. It was a place that LeBron also loved. We love the city of Chicago. It's a great market as well. Obviously, the sunny sun of Miami is great too. We had 2 great choices." The entire dynamic of the Eastern Conference would be different had this super team formed. There would be a lot of questions as well. Would Derrick Rose and Dwayne Wade be able to play together? In fact, would Rose even develop into an MVP if he played alongside LeBron and Wade? Most likely not. It's even hard to tell if this super team would be better than the one that actually formed in Miami, since Chris Bosh was so important to their success and the perfect fit on the team. A young Derrick Rose might not have adapted his game as well as Bosh did. Number 4, Dirk Nowitzki and Shaquille O'Neal. In 2004, the Shaq and Kobe feud was at its peak. Everybody knew that the 2 superstars could not coexist. And after a humiliating finals defeat against the Pistons, the Lakers blew up the team. They traded away Shaq to Miami for a massive haul. However, did you know that Shaq almost joined the Dallas Mavericks? In Shaq's personal biography, he stated that, "I always respected Dirk Nowitzki's game. In 2004, it came down to 2 teams, Miami and Dallas. Mark Cuban flew in and sat down with us, and then he went back to the Lakers and said he'd trade anybody for me except Dirk Nowitzki. Dirk was his guy." However, the problem was the Mavs really did not have enough to give up for Shaq unless Dirk was included in the trade. The Lakers front office reached out to Cuban, and the only player they wanted in return was Dirk. Mark Cuban actually considered trading Dirk for Shaq at some point, but ultimately backed out. In the 2004 offseason, the Mavs were trying to make some big moves, and getting Shaq was one of their goals. Unfortunately, it also caused them to lowball Steve Nash on a new contract offer. Nash was quite unhappy that the Mavs didn't care about him, so he left for Phoenix. You'll see this happen with the Mavs a couple more times in the future, as they would let their current players go in order to chase a star in free agency. But usually it didn't work out, and they end up losing everything. That would have been crazy if this trade went through. Shaq plus Dirk would be the perfect front court combination. The most dominant post-up player of his generation, along with the greatest shooting big man in arguably the history of the game. Throughout the 2000s, the Mavs also had a major hole at center for pretty much the entire decade, cycling through guys like Eric Dampier, Sean Bradley, and Sagana Diop. Getting Shaq would have obviously been amazing for them. Number 3, Kobe Bryant, Chris Paul, and Dwight Howard. Probably the most notorious canceled trade in NBA history. Back in 2011, the Lakers were looking to retool their team. Their first choice was to get Chris Paul, and they did agree to a 3-team trade that would send Paul to the Lakers. However, as we all know, David Stern vetoed the trade for, quote, basketball reasons. At the time, the New Orleans Hornets were owned by the league itself, so technically Stern had the right to veto that trade. Still, it was a very awkward situation, and eventually Paul would be sent to the LA Clippers in a different deal. But around this time, the Lakers were also looking to get Dwight Howard, which they eventually would a year later. But this would be in 2011. This was before Dwight's back injuries crippled him. He was still the reigning Defensive Player of the Year and just came off the best season of his career. However, none of this went into fruition. The plans to get Dwight Howard in 2011 blew up once the CP3 trade got vetoed. By the time they did get Dwight, it was after he got back surgery and his decline started after that. So, hypothetically, even if both trades went through in 2011, they might have had like one season where they'd be super good, but not for much longer. However, the Kobe and CP3 duo would still be very prominent, and they could have been contending well into the mid-2010s. Number 2, Tim Duncan, Tracy McGrady, and Grant Hill. Remember the T-Mac and Grant Hill duo on the Orlando Magic? In the early 2000s, they were expected to be the next great team, with perennial superstar Grant Hill and rising superstar Tracy McGrady leading the way. Unfortunately, Grant Hill's ankle injury stunted his career, and the two of them never got past the first round. However, in the 2000 offseason, the same time Orlando got Hill, they also almost got Tim Duncan. According to his former teammate Bruce Bowen, quote, "I remember when Tim was a free agent, he was thinking about going to Orlando when Doc was there. When Tim went out to meet with Orlando, he asked, 'Can family come on the flights to some games?' From what I understand, Doc said no, and that's when he lost Tim Duncan." Grant Hill confirmed that this story was true on ESPN, which led T-Mac feeling some kind of way. So way to go, Doc Rivers. Just imagine the rivalries we missed out on. T-Mac and Duncan in the East versus Kobe and Shaq in the West? Who wouldn't want to see that? Number 1, Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Clyde Drexler. No surprise here, the greatest super team that never was. In 1984, the Portland Trail Blazers offered the Rockets the number 2 pick of the '84 draft along with Clyde Drexler in exchange for Ralph Sampson. The Rockets already had the number 1 pick, which they used to draft Hakeem. So if they accepted this deal, they could have used the number 2 pick to draft Michael Jordan, giving them a big 3 of Hakeem, MJ, and Clyde Drexler. 3 eventual Hall of Famers throughout their entire careers. Unfortunately for them, they rejected the Blazers' offer, as Ralph Sampson looked very good in his first couple years, and pairing him with Olajuwon would give the Rockets a prominent twin tower duo in the front court. Or at least that's what they thought. But Sampson would succumb to a bunch of leg injuries shortly after, and his career went downhill by his mid-20s, leaving Olajuwon all by himself trying to carry the Rockets for the next decade. Had this trade went through, there'd be no question that the Rockets would be the most dominant team of that era, and arguably the greatest super team in NBA history. And that's all, folks. That sums up this video. Those were the 7 greatest super teams that almost formed, but a bunch of factors prevented them. Let me know your thoughts on which one of these do you think could have been the most exciting one to watch. Let me know.